I felt like, at least me personally, when we were talking about about DOGE last week, there were some specifics that I felt like we really needed to get into
Mhm.
about some of the straight up lies that are being told about what they're actually targeting.
Mm.
You know, keep in mind the organizations that they're targeting are basically nickel and dime organizations compared to the
Yes.
entirety of the U.S. federal budget. They
Yeah.
aren't the ones that are actually taking a significant amount of the money.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the military or the
Mhm.
Pentagon, because of course it's not. It is organizations such as USAID. I want to start with USAID because I think that this is a perfect case study in just how much they are trying to bullshit us.
Mhm.
So, first off, it's important for us to understand some of the types of services that USAID does. I believe we talked a little bit about some of this last week, but it employs 10,000 people, 2/3 of which currently work overseas. They operate in more than 60 countries, and some of the various programs that they're participating in are health programs such as trying to fight against polio, trying to fight against Ebola in sub-Saharan Africa, trying to provide humanitarian aid in the war in Ukraine. I want people to understand something about USAID. The narrative that is being spun by the Trump administration and by Elon Musk is that there is a massive chunk of our budget that is just being spent on bullshit. However, it is important to note that among the entirety of the U.S. federal budget, international aid accounts for less than 1%.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a huge section of the United States budget. As of fiscal year 2023, the United States spent $68 billion on international aid. $40 billion of that went to USAID, right? That is 0.6% of the entirety of the U.S. budget.
Yep.
We are not talking about, we're not talking about the fucking military. We're not talking about taking money from programs in the United States and and spending them overseas. This is a tiny portion of the entirety of the U.S. budget.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's so important to go after because we don't want to just be arbitrary defenders of institutions or whatever the government happens to be doing. We just want to defend from Elon Musk. But I think that's a great call out is that Trump and Musk are saying that our government budget is bloated, which it is. They're saying that we long-term can't handle this level of deficit spending, which is likely true. But the way that they propose to address that is by going after this waste, fraud, and abuse that they claim is out there. And ultimately, to Nathan's point, what they're doing is destroying really important functions that is just nibbling at the edges of these really important problems. And to the degree that there's waste, fraud, and abuse that they claim to have found and rooted out, they haven't been able to cite any of it or provide any actual evidence for it. So we can go through a laundry list of the things that DOGE has done so far, but the high level takeaway is, one, they're not transparently digging out significant waste, fraud, and abuse. They're just shutting down functions of government. And two, they're not saving significant amounts of money and solving our deficit crisis. They're not even getting anywhere fucking close. All the chaos and stuff they've solved so far, right? By their own summation, they have saved $1 billion total dollars by and we can talk through all of the things they've done. $1 billion out of the U.S. budget, which is $6.75 trillion. That is $6,750 billion, which means that they have so far saved 6,750th of our national budget. So over the first 24 days, when presumably they're going after the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest stuff to go after, right? They have saved that amount of money. And Musk claims that there is $2 trillion in waste that he can go after. That's $2,000 billion in waste that he can go after. So at this rate, they should be able to accomplish that by June 22nd, 2156. Because to Nathan's point, they're just not actually accomplishing anything. And so again, we don't just want to be saying this is bad because it sucks, and we'll get into a lot of the reasons why it's a problem, but we don't want to just be saying arbitrarily we should just maintain everything. But they're just lying about what they're trying to do. They're lying about what they're doing, and they're not getting anywhere close to solving this problem.
Yeah, and in the process, they're ruining lives across the globe.
Totally.
So as it stands, for nearly a decade, Congress, not the executive branch, Congress.
Oh, you mean the people that make fucking laws and appropriate fucking money?
Yeah, that's real quick before I get to this. Let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
The Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse, which means they decide what the budget is, and then the president signs it into law.
Yep.
That's how it works.
Yep.
This funding that they're supposedly saving, you're supposed to save that in legislation.
Yes.
In the legislation, in the allocation process.
Yeah.
The executive branch's job is just to write the fucking checks after they've already been allocated by Congress.
Yeah.
If you want to actually save money, do it on the budgetary level.
I think
you can't just go in there and say, oh, well, this money that was allocated by Congress, we're just not going to use it. We're just going to freeze it. We're just going to freeze this fucking organization. That's not how it fucking works. Also, a lot of these organizations that they are targeting, like USAID, so it was originally created by Kennedy as an executive order, but then in 98, under Bill Clinton, it was established through Congress as a private agency, as an independent agency of other cabinet positions. Right now, he is trying to absorb USAID into the State Department, but the legislation that created it in the first place specifically put it as a separate entity from that.
Yes.
So you can't fucking do that.
Yeah.
So right now he has put a 90-day freeze on U.S. foreign aid, which is basically just shut down all of these operations. Now, he's apparently made some exceptions for what he considers to be, life and death situations for some of these. But the thing is, there aren't enough of those. And the only way that you can get those is by filling out a waiver, which takes time. And a lot of these people are in desperate need of fucking support. So in nearly a decade, Congress has approved. Here's just an example of one thing that, one example of lives that they're fucking ruining. Congress has appropriated $607.5 million in aid for family planning, which means that an estimated 47 million women and girls across the globe are benefiting from this. Now, the thing is, there are many countries in which family planning and birth control is the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
For these women and girls, and with this freeze, which again is going on for 90 days, it is estimated that by the Guttmacher Institute did a study where they estimated that each day 130,390 women would be denied access to contraception a day, which means that by the end of the 90-day pause, 11.7 million women will have been denied, which will result in 4.2 million unintended pregnancies and more than 8,340 maternal deaths. And this is only assuming that as soon as the 90-day freeze is up, that they'll go back to what they were doing. But the problem is, they've basically indicated that when it returns, when these operations for family planning returns, they're probably just going to focus on abstinence-only shit, which we know doesn't work. So this is probably just going to result in a massive uptick of preventable maternal deaths across the globe because of this fucking pause.
Yeah.
Now, I want people to also understand the extent of which they are fucking lying. All right, they're fucking lying about the organizations that they're the waste that they're supposedly targeting. They're like, oh, we're finding the most amazing things ever. All right, the craziest things ever that we're spending money on. During a press conference, White House press secretary Caroline, I don't know if it's Lavitt, whatever, fuck her, she's an idiot, made the claim that over the last several years, there was $1.5 million to advance a DEI program in Serbia's workplace, $70,000 for the production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. You know, these were cited as the examples of wasteful spending by USAID. So, putting aside the fact that, again, these are just fucking nickels and dimes compared to the United States budget, putting aside that fact, the organization, the government agency that Trump wants to absorb U.S. aid is the State Department, right? That's important. The reason why that's important is because the musical in Ireland, the transgender opera in Colombia, the comic book in Peru, which didn't even have a transgender character, it was just a comic book in Peru that was supposed to promote educational opportunities in Peru, and it had a gay character, not a transgender character, a gay character, so they didn't even get the facts right. Those initiatives were not carried out by USAID. They were carried out by the fucking State Department, the very organization that they want to absorb USAID.
Yeah.
The only one of these organizations that USAID actually did fund was the one in Serbia. And let's look at that for a second, okay? The $1.5 million for so-called DEI in Serbia's workplaces. So it's important to note that when it comes to LGBT rights among European countries, Serbia is considered uniquely hostile. So there was this initiative to try to allow for the inclusion of LGBT people in the workforce within Serbia because of that hostility. All right? To try to reduce that hostility within the work environment. This was roughly 3 installments of $500,000 over 3 years. So as a total of $1.5 million. That's it. Like,
yeah.
So 3 of the 4 programs that they cited as waste, fraud, and abuse by USAID were not even initiatives in USAID.
Yeah.
They're fucking lying to us.
Totally. And I think that is really important because it's emblematic of their whole approach and their level of actual care and detail in the work that they're doing. Like, to your point, like, okay, now they have fucking shut down USAID that literally saves lives, and they've put aid workers at risk all over the globe as a result of this thing. And they are targeting this agency because of, like, some misplaced interpretation of, like incorrectly assigning, like, DEI initiatives to USAID. Like, they're just not taking this seriously and not, like, actually doing a thorough job. Like, and like in response to being fact checked about some of the false claims that they've been making about waste, fraud, and abuse, like, Musk basically just said, yeah, we're not going to get it right all the time. Yeah, we're not going to do it right. Like, no worries. And it's like, that's a really big problem because, like, literally people's lives depend on this shit and doing it right. And not doing it right, like, in little ways is a problem. But when you just whole scale, like, freeze the government and attempt to fire 2 million workers, like, or attempt to fire, like, thousands of workers, I should say, it's like saying we're just not going to get it right just doesn't fucking cut it, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, and the thing is, like, USAID is an example, but they're taking aim at all of our like most critical organizations within the government.
Yeah.
We know that they have been in contact with and people at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services have been providing information and collaborating with them, which is the sub-department within the Department of Health and Human Services that administers Medicare and Medicaid. That's fucking important. And Musk literally tweeted, yeah, this is where the big fraud money is happening, right? So taking aim at that, Musk has hinted about shutting down the CFPB, which is our federal regulatory agency that focuses on consumer protection, which we don't do that much of, but the amount that we do recovers, like saves the U.S. Consumer literally billions of dollars a year and has a tiny fucking budget. And they're now being like forced to comply with DOGE.
Yeah. So the entirety of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's budget is $810.6 million.
It's tiny,
right? That's tiny. But importantly, since its creation, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has returned more than $21 billion to the pockets of working class people.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like our best investment in
it's
ever.
Yeah, it is our best fucking investment. Like and it's important to note, like, this is the organization where if banks defraud you, they get your money back. Like, these are the people you go to get your money back. When the Biden administration actually made it so, like, through the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that medical debt could not be used against your credit score, and Trump has blocked that. All right, he wants you to have to like suffer a credit score hit if you can't pay for medical bills because you got sick. All right, it also looks at bank mortgage servicers, credit card companies, student loan processors, payday lenders, money transfer providers. Like, this is the organization that prevents banks from creating financial crises.
Yes.
Like they did in the 2008 recession, like they did in the fucking Great Depression.
Yep.
And also, it's important to note that this organization, which they're trying to get rid of, was also created by Congress.
Yeah.
So they do not have the authority. They do not have the authority to get rid of it. They do not have that authority.
Yeah, it was literally established after the 2008 financial crisis specifically to go after predatory financial practices. Like, all it does is exist on behalf of the American consumer to ensure that they are being protected and their interests are preserved when dealing with consumer finance. Like, it's nothing but a good thing, and it's literally established in response to some of the worst abuses of our financial system and reckless handling of our financial futures that we've seen in the United States, and they're trying to dismantle it.
Yeah, which Trump says it's really bad for people. Like, that's what he said. It's really bad for people, and in a way, he's correct. It's really bad for the people he knows. All right, because the people he knows are the ones that are fucking over the American people. The people that he knows are the rich people, the fucking robber barons that are trying to defraud the American people. He wants to make it easier for them to defraud the American people. All right, like, this is just beyond. This is just comically corrupt. This is comically corrupt. And one of the things that I think really does hit the nail on the coffin to just show why, like, what Michael said about how, about Musk's response of, oh, well, if we get something wrong, you'll let us know. It's like, first off, it's not our fucking job to let you know. All right, we're two idiots with a podcast, and we know more about the facts of USAID than the fucking people running the government. But the whole, like, oh, well, we care about getting this right. We'll make sure that we get it right. We just want to, like, but sometimes we won't. Let me give you an example of why that's complete fucking bullshit. So when the initial order to do the freeze on USAID actually came through, there was so much confusion over the extent of it. There was so much confusion regarding staff reductions that a U.S. Inspector General actually identified, the USAID Inspector General actually identified that because of that freeze, more than $489 million worth of food aid was at risk of just spoiling at ports and warehouses around the world because of that staff reduction. And this is despite the fact that Trump was supposed to offer a waiver for life-saving humanitarian aid, which food I think would fall under the category of life-saving humanitarian aid. Like, it's literally to keep you alive. This was despite that. And in response to the Inspector General coming out and saying, because of this, we now have almost $500 million worth of food that's just going to spoil around the world. In response to that, do you think that, did the Trump administration say, oh, shit, well, I guess our mistake. Let's make sure that we have enough staff to get that food, that life-saving food to people? Is that what he did? No, it's not what he did. He fired the Inspector General the day after it was released.
Jesus fucking Christ.
The day after that was released, he fired the Inspector General. They don't give a shit about the truth. They don't give a shit about any of this. All right? They're fucking liars. They're fucking robber barons.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, they just keep going after our most critical functions. This one is really bothering me. They've started to investigate and take aim at that the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Literally the agency that helps rental assistance and provides funding for housing homeless people and helps lower income families buy homes and builds and repairs affordable housing and all of the stuff you might need, I don't know, in the middle of a housing affordability crisis, for example. And they are currently investigating HUD. They're getting lists of employees, evaluating all of their contracts that include things like servicing and property management for, and inspections and appraisals for low income housing, as well as credit analysis for their mortgage insurance arm and research on how their programs are performing. Just basic functions of this thing are the things they're taking aim at, and trying to again root out this fake corruption or whatever. And is there inefficiency? I'm sure there is, right? There probably is inefficiency. There's probably things you could clear up. But the thing is that they are coming in with a hammer and seeing a nail everywhere. And it's very risky to do that in a complex and also critical service like housing and urban development.
See, I don't know if I even agree with that characterization, though, Michael, because that implies that this is unintentional.
Sure.
That implies
Agreed.
that they're unintentionally trying to dismantle the government.
You're right.
But this is what Project 2025 was all about.
It's true.
It was about trying to destroy every solitary good thing that the government actually does to make sure that the rich get richer, the poor stay where they are, that any ability of the government to try to protect civil rights or consumer rights or labor rights. They're also targeting the NLRB, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They're targeting that as well, the National Labor Relations Board. They want to make sure that every possible function of the government that benefits everyday Americans is gotten rid of, and every function that benefits the robber barons is given steroids, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a couple of additional things I want to say about this whole effort. So first off, I think we need to dispel this myth that efficiency is the main goal that we should have in government. And that might sound weird because of course we want efficiency. We want our tax dollars to be spent well, and we want we don't want waste, and we specifically don't want financial corruption and all this stuff. Right. But the idea that we should go and treat the government like a business and try to extract every dollar of value from every ounce of value or resources we put in is just it is a good thing to have, but it cannot and should not be the goal of government. And there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, in the free market, right? You've got competition, and like that's one of the drivers of why efficiency is useful, right? But it's also the big protector of quality in the market, right? Which is really key because in like the marketplace, you could have like you could be, you know, the reason efficiency doesn't run amok in the private sector is because, you know, if you can make a beer really efficiently, for example, but you do it by making the beer really shitty, right? The more efficient you get, but the shittier your beer gets, eventually, like, people are not interested in buying your beer anymore. So there's like these natural guardrails, ideally or theoretically, that can occur to like help make sure that we're driving efficiency and not sacrificing other things, right? But the not sacrificing other things is like the thing that DOGE is leaving out here, because like they're literally just trying to cut as much out of government as possible. And what we want is not necessarily just an efficient government, but an effective government. And that's really the thing we're trying to go for here, right? Because like if pursuing efficiency sacrifices the government actually fucking working and administering healthcare and stuff, like that, there's no natural correction on that, right? Because it's not like you can just ditch your government for a new one or more, like, and on top of that, like, the point of the government is to like serve the rights of the people, right? And just trying to prioritize efficiency will inevitably sacrifice that thing. Like, take criminal justice, for example, right? Like, if we were just, if like the DOJ was just like trying to maximize convictions or like total volume of prosecutions per year, you'd see tremendous violation of civil rights, right? But the point is not to just do as many prosecutions per year as possible, but to do the right, prosecute the right crimes and the right criminals. And similar with something like the United States Postal Service, for example, right? People need to be able to get their mail. And there's one organization that will deliver to all of the most inconvenient places to deliver in the United States. And the reason they do that is because they're the government. And if it were just the profit mode, they'd be like, fuck that guy in the middle of nowhere. We're definitely not bringing him anything. And like, obviously there's room for efficiency, right? We don't want to not be efficient, but the point is to be effective. The second thing I want to call it here is the obvious conflict of interest that's at play with Musk leading this organization. Richest man in the world,
Yes.
CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. SpaceX had $3.8 billion in federal contracts last year, right? And on top of that, his DOGE organization, like, I don't know, as a billionaire, you probably have a lot of money on the line in terms of like, I don't know, taxes, but they're literally investigating the IRS and evaluating their audit procedures and all of this shit. And so like, it's clearly in violation of the ethics rules that restrict someone who has the designation that Musk does as like a advisor to the government or whatever. But basically there's no one to enforce it because it's the DOJ's responsibility to enforce those ethics rules. And Trump has installed a sycophant who's literally threatened to prosecute anyone perceived as interfering with everything that DOGE is trying to go do. And so we've got this advisory board, because literally it's not a department, even though it's called a department. Because again, the only organization, the only part of the government that can make a department is fucking Congress, because they make laws, right? So it's not a department. It's this kind of advisory board of non-government employees, non-politically appointed people, like not confirmed by the Senate, which is again like one of their major powers, right? We have this basically extra governmental body that is operating with the authority of the president, with the threat of prosecution by the DOJ, which is essentially taking over all of the functions of government without a legitimate claim to that authority, which is a coup.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds extreme because it obviously is, but like, think about it. Back in like the day, a coup would be you like get enough of the country's guns and enough of the country's people to march into the Capitol and take it over. But today, everything in the government is controlled by computer systems, obviously, and like by the functions of the government, over which Musk, a private citizen now, has gained unilateral control. With the threat of prosecution and the power of the president on his side, like there's not a lot of things that could constrain the things that he is attempting to do at this point, and not a lot that he couldn't keep, like, hold hostage now that he has been given express, like, the government has been given express requirements to give them access to all of their systems and comply with all of their demands. It is not overextending to say that this is a totally unconstitutional breach of, like, our government and invasion of our, like, structure, and could totally be constituted as a coup in process.
Absolutely. Trump got elected on an anti-immigration message, on an anti-elite message, and on a I'm going to lower the prices of groceries message. Well, now effectively, the president of the United States, the actual president of the United States, the one who actually has the power right now, is an immigrant who is the richest man in the world. And on top of that, eggs cost more than fucking gold.